Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda, and this is a vlog about my late diagnosis journey of being autistic and having ADHD. I also have a memory disorder called SDAM, stands for Severely Deficient Autobiographical Memory, and I have total aphantasia, which means that I don't experience any of the senses in my mind. And when I started this channel a little over a year ago, I really didn't expect it to get any subscribers. I just needed a way to process all of the thoughts that I was having about being diagnosed. Actually, when I first started the channel, I put up a couple of videos about aphantasia and SDAM because at the time, not many people had ever heard of aphantasia. It started to get a lot more attention over the last year, and still very few people know about SDAM, and I just wanted to have my experience recorded because there are people out there who have this memory disorder and don't know it because it's still being researched and it's not anything that you can be officially diagnosed with. And before people start storming my comments, I am officially diagnosed with autism and ADHD, and that happened about a year ago on October 10th was when I got my official diagnosis. But I'm a person who processes out loud. I'm not very good at keeping a journal. Many years ago, I had a blog, and I would write out my thoughts in a blog format. But over the years, I've learned that I'm an auditory processor out loud. And while I have a therapist that I talk to once a week, when you get something as big as being diagnosed autistic when you are 42 years old, there's a lot of processing that has to go on. And I just needed a place to vent. And I decided to just go ahead and upload the videos because I figured that if I was struggling, that maybe other people would be struggling in the same way. And it's always good to, when you find somebody who is going through something that you're going through, so that you realize that you're not alone. I just realized I didn't hook up my microphones. I think they're dead, so I'm sorry if the sound quality on this one isn't very good. Anyway, the last year after getting diagnosed has, and I've said it over and over, has been a roller coaster of emotion. And right after my diagnosis, I would find myself crying all the time. Like I was never somebody who cried a lot before. Like, I'm not saying I was not someone who ever cried. It just wasn't like I wasn't a crier. Like, there's some people who cry all the time at just anything. It took a lot to get me to cry. And I'm not saying that as a judgment, a bad thing or anything. I'm just, that's like a statement of fact. After getting diagnosed, I was crying in my car. I would go to my closet, sit down on the floor, and just bawl out my my eyes. While I was cooking dinner, I would sit down in my pantry on a stool. I don't know why. I like these like cozy spaces. And just cry while I was cooking dinner. Just random thoughts would hit my head, and the tears would start flowing. After a couple of months, I was crying less, but still, you know, something would hit me and I would cry. And a lot of this has to do with processing. What happens is when you get information like this, that, oh, there was nothing ever wrong with you, you were just autistic, all the struggles that you've had your entire life were because you were autistic, you go back and you relive your life. Well, this has been really difficult for me since I have a memory disorder. I don't have autobiographical memories. I have semantic memories, and I have like muscle memory, you know, like it's not like I don't have any memory, but I can't relive the experiences of my life. So a lot of what I'm processing is like trying to fill in holes and gaps, you know, in my memory. Like, I have a semantic knowledge of being at the bike rack in elementary school. My parents got divorced when right after my 3rd grade year, and in 4th grade I started a new school. And it was an interesting set of circumstances. My mom was a nursemaid, a healthcare professional. I don't know the right word for it. And so after my divorce, she got a job where we lived with this lady who was bedridden and took care of her. And my mom's, board, and we were allowed to live there, obviously, and that was part of her payment because she needed round-the-clock care. Well, she lived in a fairly nice neighborhood. And so it was really interesting growing up because I lived in a fairly nice house and we ate really nice, good food, but yet I still had a single mom that didn't make a lot of money. So our clothes weren't very fancy, and I didn't have a lot of toys. So I was in this weird mix of being on the edge of wealth, but also very I wouldn't say poor. I was never I'm thinking of the right words. I was never food insecure because of the situation that we had, and I always had clothes. They were never the designer names. Well, so in elementary school, when I was a new student at the school and I was trying to make friends, and again, I was undiagnosed autistic, I have this semantic memory of being around the bicycle rack, and there was all these girls, and now I know that they were bullying me and making fun of my clothes. See, this is where things will hit me, because at the time, because of my autism and not understanding social cues, I thought that they were including me. I thought that these girls were trying to be my friend. Because I have a memory disorder, I can't replay the event in my head. I don't remember actually what happened. All I remember was bike racks, bunch of girls, and something to do with the fact that my clothes weren't trendy. And I don't know why at the time I thought this was them including me. I think that they were saying that I could come over to their house and they were going to give me clothes or something. But I don't think that ever happened. I just know now as an adult what they were doing was mean and bullying and making fun of me. But because of my memory gap, my memory disorder, I can't play it all the way out, and I just have to be okay with that. But after getting my diagnosis, I'm reliving all of these little moments in my life where my autism is what affected me. And if I had known I was autistic, it's you can't relive history, right? You can't rewrite history. If I had known I was autistic back in the 80s or 90s, I probably would have had to go through ABA training, which is applied behavioral analysis, which now it still exists for reasons that I don't understand. But any adult autistic person will tell you that ABA is torture, and don't put your kid through ABA. The people who created ABA also created conversion therapy for gay people. The whole premise of ABA is to make an autistic person more neurotypical appearing. which is very dangerous and detrimental to our brains and how our brains work. But because I was undiagnosed, basically society became my ABA, my applied behavioral analysis. So like when these kids made fun of me at the bike rack, I'm sure at that moment in time, because that is such a like thing that's etched in my semantic memory, like I know it happened, I just can't remember the episodic, like I can't remember what all happened there. But it must have been something key for that to like have been, because I also have emotional memory. So when something really upsetting gets stuck in my head, I will remember more facts about it. So because I was undiagnosed, something there made me change a little bit of my personality. Oh my God, and I'm just remembering even more. From 1st to 3rd grade, when my parents were married and we were fairly middle class because it was 2 income, we had a pretty nice house with a pool. And I was going, it was like out in the suburbs, and I was going to a school where all the kids around me were my socioeconomic class. I had a different personality at that school because I was more comfortable with it, because I started there and, you know, worked my way up through the grades. I got kind of reputation for being quirky, but in the fun, adorable, loving way. Like I started a fashion trend where kids would wear mismatched socks on purpose, and that spread through my grade level, and it was all because of something that I started. But it was like, so it was cool to be the weird, fun, quirky kid. I had a confidence level that pulled it off. When I had to change schools and my parents getting divorced and all of that, so much was different in my life that I had to start masking more heavily to try to fit in with these kids that were not the same as me. And around that time is when I really struggled to make any friends. I joined a Girl Scout troop, and that gave me a social outlet. They weren't really ever my friends because things would happen and one of the kids would have a party and I would have to be invited because, oh, you have to invite the whole Girl Scout troop. But it was never because they wanted to include me. And you know, kids would tell you that. The parents made them do it. They would tell you, yeah, you have to be here, things like that. Kids can be mean. I did have one friend that I think was actually a real true friend for most of my middle school years. She was an immigrant. Well, she wasn't. Her parents were, and she was 2nd generation. And so I think because she was also kind of a misfit in a way. And I also am 99.9% sure she was also undiagnosed ADHD. And a lot of times neurodivergent people, we get along with each other. So, you know, growing up, I think she was a friend. We definitely had a lot of headbutting over the years because we had very different personalities. But it was like we were kind of stuck together because the rest of the class and world would shun us. Oh my gosh. And it wasn't even just the students. Some of the teachers were actually bullies too. And I don't say that lightly. Nowadays, I don't think some of this behavior would happen in schools, and I'm sure maybe it does, but a lot of autistic people have other a lot of autistic people have other neurodivergencies, and such as speech impediments And my speech impediment wasn't very bad, but even to this day, I still struggle with my R sound. A lot of times if I say the word really, I have to be very careful because the R will sound like a W and it'll come out really. If I'm talking really fast, it definitely does that. And I had a teacher in 4th grade named Miss Roberts, and I would say Miss Roberts, but I never heard that I was saying a W sound. To me, I thought I was saying an R sound. And Miss Roberts would say in front of the entire class, Amanda, if you can't say my name correctly, then I'm not going to answer your question. Like, what teacher does that? And so she put a target on my back that already existed, and now she just made it worse and amplified it. And because I was a people pleaser, that just made me work all the much harder to try to win her over. I didn't understand that this was really a toxic teacher to me, and that I should, like, my mom wanted to go and talk to the principal, and I was like, no, you can't. Like, I wouldn't let my mom because, like, I wanted Miss Roberts to like me. I was such a people pleaser, and my entire life had been the teacher's pet, because that's part of the mask, is like making people around you happy keeps you safe. And Miss Roberts was one of the first people that came across that did not like me as an adult. Adults always loved me. And so it's like my brain worked overtime to try to get her to like me. And for anybody saying my mom should have just stepped in anyway, she was also undiagnosed autistic. So, you know, there's just levels of trauma. Anyway, the whole thing about this video is that when you get a late diagnosis, you do spend time going over your life and reliving things. And it's like you have to take that time to process, because the thing that I want people to realize is that being undiagnosed autistic in our society causes trauma, which leads to burnout, which causes actual physical and mental health problems. The other day, my child's psychologist said that she sometimes, if an adult comes in wondering if they're autistic, she will say, well, if you've made it this far, I wouldn't spend time worrying about whether or not you're autistic. And I wanted to reach through the telehealth computer and like shake that woman, because I wanted to tell her that it is very important for adults to get diagnosed, because there's no way for us to heal from the trauma that we are experiencing and the gaslighting of society around us about our own experience if we don't get validation. And that's one reason why self-diagnosis in this community is so welcome, because there are still psychologists out there who won't diagnose adults, or that don't recognize autistic traits in people who present with internal autistic traits. For a while there, people were saying female presenting and male presenting, but that really excludes a lot of the trans people, BIPOC people, because being a person of color in our society, also a lot of times the autistic traits will go internally and be higher masking because of the intersectionality of being a person of color. So the reason why a lot of women have internally presenting traits of autism is because how society treats girls and boys. When a boy gets rambunctious, oh, they're just being a boy. When a girl does it, honey, you need to sit still and, stop that. we would get corrected, and so our mask would form. So at a very early age, we learn to internalize our autistic traits. And again, this is not across the board. Obviously, there are some autistic girls who present externally because they either have a different level of autism or they were raised in an environment that let them just be autistic. Because my mom also was undiagnosed. She didn't realize she was autistic until I got my diagnosis. Basically, when I was a kid, she was teaching me things of how to appear neurotypical because she self-corrected. When she got teased for these things in school, she learned, oh, this isn't a good way to act. So because she was undiagnosed and didn't know it was because of autism, when I would do those things, she would tell me, oh, don't do those things because that's not how we act in public. And so it wasn't her fault. She thought she was teaching me good behavior when in fact she was repressing autistic traits such as stimming in public. And there are some things like, I'm glad, like when I was a little kid, I used to blow spit bubbles. I mean, that's kind of gross, but it was a stim that I had, and kids would make fun of me for it, so I self-corrected and stopped blowing spit bubbles. It's definitely an autistic trait. It felt good, it sounded good, it made a weird noise in my mouth. It was very stimmy. And there are some autistic traits that can be redirected and still be, I think, okay for the autistic person to be able to integrate into society. Because while I think it's important to be autistic and let us be autistic, we also do need to, live in society together. There needs to become a harmony. Like me stimming and pulling on this fidget toy, if I was in a business meeting, does not harm anybody else. Or if I was in school pulling on this while the teacher's talking. For my blind viewers, I've got a quiet stem today, fidget toy. Sorry for Watson's nails. It's these 3 silicone noodles that I have. One's yellow, purple, and orange. They come in all different colors. And I just really love tugging on the silicone and pulling them. This would harm nobody in a classroom or a business meeting. But if I was an autistic person and I was in a high-powered business role and I was doing this, I can't even imagine the treatment I would get. This would not be cool. And does this harm anybody? This harms literally nobody. Is it slightly distracting to somebody to see me pulling on this? Possibly. But do you know how many distracting things an autistic person tunes out in their environment all day, every day? If we can do that, then you can do that. And when I say we tune out, actually, truly, we don't tune out. We notice the thing, and then we have to do mental work to not acknowledge it. Like for instance, my camera is in front of a window right now and my neighbor is getting into their car. I have to see that, pay attention, process it, and continue speaking at the same time. A lot of times there are noises, like an air conditioner running, that an autistic person hears the noise, their brains automatically tune it out for them. It's not something they have to consciously do. An autistic person hears the noise, has to go, okay, that's not important to me, but we don't actually stop hearing it. We just have to work on not acknowledging it. I've mentioned that before in my videos. I literally feel my clothes on me all day, every day. Watson, stop. I don't tune out the sensation of my clothes. Like I just heard Watson, he was about to start growling. He didn't actually growl there. He was about to. He made that breathing noise like he was about to. Like I'm always aware of everything going on around me. And then I have to take extra effort to tune it out. Anyway, I'm gonna turn off this video now because it's hitting about 25-minute mark, and this was just me processing out loud. There's no rhyme and reason to it. I just kind of getting back to the roots of my vlog because I've been feeling a lot of PDA, profile of autism, pathological demand avoidance, like, oh, I need to make sure I'm providing content that people want to watch, which started to feel like a demand, a perceived demand. I'm not saying that y'all are saying that about me. I'm just saying that's what it felt like. And it's like, you know what? The roots of my channel were just me vlogging and processing out loud. And while I do think both kinds of videos are useful and helpful, and I want to be a disability advocate, and I want to make sure that I bring bullet pointed videos sometimes I'm just sharing my life with you guys. And I appreciate anybody who gets something out of it. And with that, I hope y'all have a really good day. And if you're not having a good day, that's okay too. Your worth and value is not based on your productivity, no matter what society says. So at the very least, try to hydrate, try to eat something, try to do something for your body, whether it's brush your hair, wash your face, and then try to do something that gives you dopamine and makes your brain go wee, because that is what keeps us healthy. Until the next one, bye guys. Watson, were you trying to talk at the end of my video, dear? Were you trying to say that you weren't in it enough and that you needed more of a spotlight? Is that right? He says, no, not me, couldn't be.